My wife's sister tried to come on to me, and now my wife is struggling to get over it. Sorry for how long this is. As the title says, my wife's sister made a pass at me at a recent family gathering and I have no idea what to do. For context, I think my wife Jenna is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister Mary, who is very conventionally attractive, as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional but, in my opinion, striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple years ago and now works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, just wait until you see my sister. When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way, and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me and asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one/pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes, and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me to not cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to touch me and make little innuendo/comments about me or my body. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on it before. She'll cool it for a while but eventually start doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens my wife is upset for days and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago we were at my Mill's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and pressed me up against the door with her whole body and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the fuck she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both have been thinking and kept insisting, you know you want to. I told her she was out of her mind and ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days Mary has been calling and texting my wife doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the hottest girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife a million times that I did not and would never say, even though she believes my account of the situation. She's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating. She pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her hand. She says she feels hideous and disgusting and I don't know what to do. This is the lowest I have ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. Reddit, what should I do? Update, my 37M, wife's 34F, sister 29F, tried to kiss me and now my wife is spiraling. Help me. I got a few requests for updates, so here it is. I first want to thank everyone so much for your advice. It was extremely helpful and gave me a lot to think about. I'm especially thankful for the folks that asked me how I was doing. I realize that I have literally never had a chance to check in with myself after these things happen, and I've actually been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I've been harassed for years and it has either been brushed off or it's been eclipsed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her for it, but this has been a good lesson in me not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child, even though my wife is a freaking neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally. My wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." Whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so effing gangry to think about how her asshole family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some folks ask me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility just didn't exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually, and that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary's shit down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, on to the update. The night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her whole life, but that only she can decide whether she still wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, Her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was sexual assault and she's been sexually harassing me for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need. 2. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image/self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has of course been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense, claiming I attacked her, I'm a substance addict, I abuse my wife, all kinds of bullshit that, thankfully, nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the goddamn queen she is. I want to thank you all again for your help. You really helped me understand the severity of the problem, and again, thanks for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. Y'all are the best. Hopefully, final update. My 37M wife's 34F sister 29F tried to kiss me and now my wife is spiraling. Help me. So I guess my original posts got reposted onto TikTok and some other subs here on Reddit, so I've been getting tons of messages asking for updates. It feels like things are mostly settled, and I'm really hoping this will be my final update. First, I want to say that I've gotten so many questions about who Mary is, and I'm just not going to say. Suffice it to say that she's never been household name famous, but she made a living solely on modeling for about a decade from what I understand, so she must have been popular enough that fashion people might know her. I really don't know how that whole world works, but emo, it doesn't matter how many names you drop. You're not famous if you don't have a Wikipedia page. Also got lots of comments that, mostly, jokingly called me a simp, and I can't argue with that. I totally am a simp for my wife. She's the coolest. I hope you all find a love that makes you feel this way. Okay, I think that's it. Here is the actual update. My wife loved the getaway weekend. We had a blast and by the end of it she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it all. Many of you warned me that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years and she's heard me vent about Mary before, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a predator and claimed to have proof that I assaulted her. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a camera that caught the whole incident, and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, so my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private information and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a dick pic, not mine obviously, to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. And I know this is completely beside the point, but of course she chose the weirdest looking dick I've ever seen. I played team sports all my life. I've seen a lot of dicks, and this was something else. It's honestly kind of funny to think about Mary googling gross penis or something and sifting through hundreds of images to find "Juu" as the right one. I had to apologize to everyone on staff and thankfully folks were surprisingly understanding. It's actually been kind of a nice bonding experience with my coworkers. I honestly didn't consider myself to be super well liked in the office, but it feels like everyone has been going out of their way to be kind to me and it means a lot. Anyway, at this point it was clear we had to escalate things legally. I really wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation, and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted but I think was pretty badass. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting off her family completely. This happened on Friday, And on Sunday Mary's best frenemy and sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond. Then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week and will be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Thanks again for everyone who offered advice. This was a messy situation, but it definitely would have been messier without your help. Update: my 37M wife's 34F sister 29F tried to kiss me and now my wife is spiraling. Help me. I forgot about this account completely until today and logged in to see so many comments and messages asking for an update. It's honestly touching to see how many people care about this situation and want the best for me and my wife. This will be a brief update. I don't want to make this a regular thing, and the original situation has resolved enough that I am hopeful this will be the end of the saga. Mary and my in-laws have pretty much left us alone. My mill still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a badass. She has done some amazing work in therapy and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family, she's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, etc. She's even stopped putting up with some of my shit. To be fair, that shit is stuff like my leaving my socks everywhere around the house, but I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions fully eclipsing the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity even outside of her family. Often if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update: she's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I am shitting my pants with excitement. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her beauty. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know and she's not sure if / when she'll tell them. But if she does, there are going to be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life. And it'll start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to the end of the earth for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been absolutely incredible in their support and they're so excited for us. Things are looking better than they ever have. That's all, folks. Thanks again for your support on this wild journey.
Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Do you think OP is NTA or YTA? Leave a comment below and let us know your opinion.
My girlfriend was raped while in the process of cheating on me. I don't know what to do from here. I've been sitting here for like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to start this. My head is completely spinning. My thoughts are just all over the place. I guess with the backstory, I've been dating Sarah, not using real names, for just under 2 years now. She has a close friend, John, who she's known since she was a child. I never liked him. He was always a little creepy, blatantly flirted with Sarah for the entirety of our relationship and made occasional passes that I was not comfortable. So cut to like 2 weeks back, Sarah and I were invited to a gathering/party by a mutual friend. I had a workshop for work that night, so I couldn't attend, and with current circumstances I was never inclined to go anyways. I didn't want Sarah to go either, but she was very adamant, and I guess I just didn't want an argument, so I said fine. We ended up running into John later that day and he mentioned the same party and asked us if we had been invited as well. My girlfriend told him she was going but I wasn't, and he got this weird smile on his face and said something along the lines of, "If you're going, I guess I have to go." Just something about his smile and way he said really rubbed me the wrong way. Plus I didn't want to be possessive, but the idea of the both of them together all night at a party did not sit with me well. After we got back to our apartment, I told her, a bit more firmly this time, that I'm not comfortable with her going to the party, especially with him there. She told me I was overreacting and shut down the conversation at that. I'm sure most of you can figure out where this is going. I went to the workshop and she went to the party. It got to be like 2 a.m. and she hadn't gotten home nor was answering my calls. Naturally I was incredibly worried. About an hour later, one of her friends called me and told me was found unconscious at the party and driven to the hospital. She was roped by John. After spending 2 days, including that night at the hospital, and talking with police, I took her home. She told me John drugged her and dragged her upstairs, where it happened in one of the bedrooms. House the party was at is very large. She was an absolute mess. She didn't want to go outside. She wasn't eating. Had terrible nightmares. I did everything I could to comfort her through this process. I was devastated for her and hated to see her like this, and I know this makes me sound like a terrible person. I don't blame her for John assaulting her, but I couldn't get the fact I tried more than once to dissuade her from going to the party, and specifically saying her being with John makes me uncomfortable out of my head. I feel I could have done more to protect her and she should have listened to how I felt. Important side note. Turns out John is literal living garbage. After her assault we both felt it was best to get justice. There were drugs in her system and all the physical indications of rape. We immediately filed a restraining order and the police opened an investigation. Within the span on a week after news had gotten around, 2 other girls came forward with similar encounter with John. So the guy is basically a serial rapist. Cut to now. My girlfriend is still in no better shape than she was 2 weeks ago. She gets panic attacks out of nowhere. She's lost like 15 pounds and absolutely refuses to leave our apartment even to seek therapy. I was committed to taking care of her and being there for her, but I got a call from one of my close friends, Sam, this morning. It was a long conversation, but it basically boiled down to him as well as many others at the party that night saw Sarah flirting with John the entire beginning of the party. According to him and people he had been talking to, she was at the very least matching, if not being the initiator in these exchanges with John. He also recounts that she wasn't blackout drunk or seemingly that out of it, and worst of all, many saw her holding John's hand taking John upstairs. At this point I feel like I want to vomit. He told me he wanted the situation to cool down a bit before telling me and was going to tell me after the party what happened, but with her being taken to the hospital under the circumstances, he didn't feel it was the right time. I decided to not assume anything and asked her about the specifics about what happened that night. She tried to tell me the same thing, that she was drugged and dragged to a bedroom, but when I told her what Sam had told me, the color completely drained from her face. She started to panic and I did my best to calm her down, but it was at least 30 minutes before she could catch her breath to speak. She was sobbing, but she was coherent enough to understand and basically confessed to cheating on me. She said she was drunk and hadn't been out for so long she wanted some adventure. She admitted she the one that took John to the bedroom and wasn't dragged there against her will. She kept apologizing and saying it was a terrible mistake and that nothing else was a lie. He did rope her. I believe the last part. As far as I can understand now, it was when they were in the bedroom fooling around when he slipped something into here or something like that, then he forced himself on her. I don't know what to do anymore. She was roped, but to me the everything before that was her still intending to cheat and actively cheating on me. I am devastated and I don't even want to look at her right now. I left the apartment and am currently at Sam's house. I don't know anything anymore. She lost her job to COVID. I pay rent for the apartment where her name isn't on the lease and groceries. She's become completely emotionally dependent on me the past few weeks. If I did break up with her, she would have nowhere to go, and as much as I resent her, I don't want something terrible happening to her. Please help. I need advice. Don't know what to do. Edit. There's been a lot of responses in a short time, so I thought it would be best to address some things here. First off, I've been made aware that 2 posts of somewhat similar situations have to posted to this sub in the past 2 weeks or so. I don't know what I could post here to prove this is true without exposing my privacy, so I'm sorry, but all I can do is give you my word. I'm just here looking for advice. I don't think this is something someone should be fantasizing for a karma farm. It's completely upended my life. Second thing is people questioning Sarah's account of the events. I didn't include every detail because I'm just trying to get my thoughts out, but her story matches the other 2 women who came forward in terms of the pattern of John's behavior. The 2 other women were also initially in a consensual environment before he drugged them and assaulted them. From what they've said and posted, a large part of the reason they didn't come forward was because it started as consensual and they thought that would make them not be believed. I also didn't want to get too graphic, but the nature of Sarah's assault was very violent and not something most anybody would consent to, so that may be why he drugs them first as well. She had and still has traces of large bruises around her neck and other parts of her body, as well as scratches and gashes. I don't really doubt at all she was indeed assaulted. The drug found in her system was ketamine. While Sarah did enjoy partying, she never did anything harder than weed. Third, Sarah has been living abroad for school since starting college. Her parents have been made aware of the situation, but coming from a very religious background, while concerned for her well-being, aren't exactly being supportive nor have put in the effort to come see her. She never had many close friends for as long as I've known her other than John. I don't know where she would go if I told her she can't stay at my apartment. Update. I needed some time to sort out the situation, but I did read most as many replies as I could, and I appreciate all the advice and messages, especially from those who had been put in similar situations as I guess I should start by clearing a few things up. First off, to everyone who thought my story had holes in it. It definitely did, and I'm sorry for that. At the time and even now I was missing a lot of information and was filling in holes as best I could with what I had. I also didn't want the post to get too long, so I left out information that I guess would have painted a better picture of my situation. I'll try my best to include those missing details. If you're just interested in the update, skip down a few paragraphs. So, details about John. He is part of Sarah and I's social circle and lives quite close to us. Some of the behavior from John towards Sarah that made me uncomfortable throughout the course our relationship included constantly making comments about her body, putting his arm around her every chance he could, asking her to go with him on trip to Europe last summer, just the 2 of them, poking her breasts when she's wearing tight clothing, saying things like I'm lucky I met her when I did or she would have been with him by now, etc. It's not any one thing but accumulation of everything that made me uncomfortable with her spending a lot of time with him. She never encouraged his behavior, at least when I was around, but didn't actively discourage it either, despite we openly talking to her about my boundaries. She just brushed it off as them knowing each other for so long and being comfortable with one another. A few smaller details I guess were relevant I should mention. 1. We are not in the US. COVID, while still obviously an issue in our country, our area is relatively COVID-free, and everyone going to the party Sarah went to were part of our larger social circle. It was at a large condo a friend of ours was renting for the summer. It was not some open invite party with 100 plus people. Still dumb, I know. There were 30-ish, maybe 40 people there, so in hindsight, yeah, no one should have been at the party to begin with. Lastly, clearing up both Sarah and I's financial situation. I am lucky enough to have my parents paying for my tuition whatever scholarships didn't cover, so I can focus my resources on just day-to-day living costs like rent, groceries, etc. Sarah, on the other hand, was pretty much thrown to the wolves after finishing high school. Her parents, like I stated in my edit, are very religious and very controlling, so they told Sarah they were only going to pay for her schooling if she went to a local college. She refused and came to my school. She lived in residency for her first 2 years, which was covered by financial aid. I got my apartment about a year ago, and with COVID and her not wanting to go back home, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me. Her finances are basically completely tied up on tuition and student loans, so I offered to keep paying full rent despite her living with me full time. Actual update. Oh boy, I wish I could say things have gotten more clear in the past week, but honestly it's been a total cluster of CK and it's only gotten worse. I spent a few days at Sam's reaching out to friends trying to get a clearer picture of what happened that night before going back to talk to Sarah. I got told same story multiple times, that she was the one who started flirting with John and led him upstairs. I should say right now, in my first conversation with Sarah confronting her, she didn't explicitly say she had intended to sleep with him that night, she just confirmed she took him upstairs. She was basically having panic attack throughout the entire conversation, so I had a hard time pushing for clarity. So by this point in my heart I was trying to find any excuse at all for her to save our relationship, but my mind was telling me that the relationship was over, at least for the time being. But, as many of you commented, despite my obviously grief in losing a 2-year relationship, I decided I'd be willing to let her stay in my apartment again rent-free to at least the end of October to sort out other living arrangements and support. I called her about 3 days after staying at Sam's and told her I'm willing to listen to her side of the story, but I need the complete truth about everything, and she agreed, so I went back to my apartment later that evening. We sat down and I asked her about what really happened that night. She started crying right away but not panicking, and told she had to tell me something about herself. Sarah has always been into the partying scene more than me. I've never really been comfortable around drugs and that environment in general, but I went with her anyways about once a month or so. Her, on the other hand, would have girls' nights out and parties pretty much every weekend. Right at the beginning of our relationship I told her I'm not really comfortable being with someone that isn't involved with hard drug use. My brother has a history of addiction and I've seen what it can do to somebody and the people around them. She told me that's fine since she only drinks and smokes weed occasionally. Well, it turns out for about a year now she started doing harder drugs at parties when I'm not there, and her girls' nights were often just her and some from our social circle. John included, going to a friend's apartment to do shrooms. I was shocked to say the least, and I didn't even know what to think in that moment. I just tried to ask her more about what happened on the night she was assaulted and if she was intending on cheating on me that night. She comes clean and tells me she did lead John upstairs but swears she wasn't trying to sleep with him but wanted drugs. He told her it was cocaine, but obviously it was not, since only fentanyl and alcohol showed up in her system at the hospital. She told me he immediately started coming on to her, but she tried to fight him off, but eventually she was too drugged out to fight back. After consoling her for a while, I asked her what her relationship with John was really like before and if they did anything together before what happened that night. She admitted that they made out a few times before around Christmas last year, but promised it didn't go any further than that. She was begging me to forgive her and that she needs me in her life. That she just was in a rebellious phase because of her upbringing. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and still don't, to be honest. I just was completely overwhelmed by everything. So I told her I needed to clear my head and left again. Sam was nice enough to let me stay at his place again. I talked to some of my friends she said she was doing substance with, and they confirmed. I was pretty upset at them for hiding it from me, but they told me she basically forced them to keep it a secret from me. It feels like so much of my relationship was a lie. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and she lied constantly for who knows how long. At this point my mind is basically made up, so I call her and told her it's over, but she can stay at my apartment till the end of October, but only if she finds a therapist and gets help during that time. She basically lost it during the call, but my mind was made up, so I just said I'd be staying at Sam's for a while and hung up. I wish that was the last of the SHT that happened, but literally a day after that I start getting spammed with hate messages and calls from friends, relatives and people I don't even know. Turns out she's posted all over social media about how I was breaking up with her because she was roped and was kicking her out with nowhere to go in these COVID times. She also wrote that I've been emotionally abusing her after her assault, victim blaming her and stopping her from getting in therapist. I'm completely lost. I'm furious, heartbroken. I can't even describe all the emotions I felt. I called her again that night and told her she has 2 weeks to move out now, and I don't want to hear from her again. I had to spend the past week playing damage control, trying to clear my name on social media, calling friends and family. I was ostracized by co-workers, though luckily my boss was on my side. I was getting doxxed, death threats. My life basically fell apart. Sam, thank God, was completely understanding through all of this and said I could stay at his place until Sarah moved out. She's moving out on Friday, but I don't want to go back to that apartment anymore. I've had to cut out friends. My reputation is now in the garbage. I lost the first and only person I've ever loved. I don't know anymore. I low-key want to die, but I'll find a therapist sooner or later. I just feel numb to everything. I don't even know if I'm right or wrong in this situation anymore. I hope I haven't rambled on too much. I know this post is really long, but thank you really for everyone who showed support in the last post. It meant a lot. Edit. Someone's comment made me realize she was still lying to me the second time I talked to her. She changed her story about what she was drugged with and I didn't even realize. I was not told by the hospital what she had in her system, and I'm not very knowledgeable on substances in general. All that information I had came from Sarah. I don't even know if she was drugged against her will at all at this point. God, I'm doubting everything now. This is not the person I thought she was. I don't even care. She's out of my life now.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to check out our other videos and leave a comment with your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. See you next time on our channel, where the best Reddit stories come to life.